Hidden in the world's most isolated corners, these rivers test the limits of survival. From raging rapids to crocodile-infested waters, here are 15 of the most remote and dangerous rivers on Earth. Flowing through some of the world's most isolated and unforgiving terrains, these rivers are as perilous as they are remote, from treacherous rapids to rivers surrounded by untamed wilderness. Join me for today's video, we're counting down the top 15 most remote and dangerous rivers in the world. Starting with number 15, the Tárcoles River, which is known locally as the Rio Grande, flows for about 69 miles or 111 kilometers from the mountains of the Central Valley to the Gulf of Nicoya along the Pacific coast. It's famous for its unique ecosystem and the wild, untamed landscape around it, but no matter how beautiful it may be, there's a danger hidden beneath the surface. That's because it's home to a large population of American crocodiles, with several hundred thought to be there, with some reaching over 15 feet or 4.5 meters long. The river is said to have one of the highest concentrations of crocodiles per square mile anywhere on Earth, and while this has made it a popular attraction for tourists who can safely see them from a bridge called the Puente Rio Tárcoles, the crocodiles also mean that the river is one of the most dangerous for any human activity. Swimming, kayaking, or even getting too close to the riverbank is a bad idea because of the very real risk posed by these predators. Further adding to the danger here is the way that the Tárcoles River winds through vast sections of remote Costa Rican wilderness, including across mangrove forests and other large wetlands. These areas are pretty difficult to access and have created a haven for various other species of wildlife. This means, though, that if you were to encounter a dangerous situation somewhere in here, immediate help would be unlikely, and the inaccessibility of large portions of the river makes rescue efforts pretty tough. It's not remote along the entire course, though, as it passes through several towns and cities, including the urban areas around San Jose, but water picks up large amounts of pollution. It is, as a result, one of the most contaminated rivers in Costa Rica, with pollutants such as industrial waste, sewage, plastics, and agricultural runoff. In total, it's thought to drain as much as 67% of the country's total untreated organic and inorganic waste, which is a real concern. This of course harms the river's ecosystem, but it also poses health risks to those who live near it or rely on it. In a country that in recent years relies heavily on ecotourism, this is an issue that initiatives are trying to reverse, but for now means that wherever along the river you are, it's definitely not one to swim in. 14. Kuskokwim River in Alaska. The Kuskokwim River is the longest river system to be contained entirely within one state of the United States. Stretching about 702 miles or about 1,130 kilometers from the Kuskokwim Mountains to the Bering Sea, it's also the longest free-flowing river in the U.S., meaning it's not blocked by any dams, and along its route it passes through some of the most remote wilderness in North America. Flowing through rural Alaska, it is, though, a lifeline to various indigenous communities such as the Yupik people who have relied on it for centuries for transportation and fishing. The river goes through the heart of Alaska's wilderness past forests and mountains, and with no road networks connecting those areas to the rest of the state, the river is often the only accessible route. Especially in winter when it freezes over and becomes a natural ice road, using the frozen river is, though, potentially dangerous because unexpected temperature changes and shifting ice conditions can suddenly see it turn back into water. The river's level, when it's flowing, can also rise quickly due to rain or melting snow, leading to some flash floods, and these surges make boating and fishing particularly risky, as powerful currents can easily capsize small vessels. The extreme remoteness of the river means that there's very little chance of rescue if there's an emergency, and many sections are in places where cell phones or radio coverage is limited. The unpredictable weather, including sudden snowstorms, extreme cold, and high winds further increase the risks, and during the spring, large chunks of ice break apart and move downstream, creating dangerous conditions that make the river almost impassable during this time. If you can overcome these challenges, though, it's an incredible landscape to explore with a wide range of wildlife. Still, even these must be approached with caution, because with species like brown bears, moose, and wolves being common in the area, you'll need to keep your wits about you. 13. The Orinoco River. The Orinoco River is one of the longest rivers in South America. and the fourth largest in the world in terms of the volume of water that passes along it, covering a distance of over 1,300 miles or 2,100 kilometers through Venezuela and Colombia, across dense rainforests, savannas, and wetlands before reaching the Atlantic Ocean. Traveling through remote areas of the Amazon basin, the Orinoco is undoubtedly a beautiful river, and one with a great cultural importance, so much so that its name translates to mean place to paddle, but you might want to think twice before you consider actually doing that. Much of this has to do with its extreme remoteness, as most of the river flows through isolated regions with very little infrastructure. The mouth of the river was actually first documented by Columbus on his third voyage, but it would be a further 453 years until people made their way to its source, which is close to the border with Brazil. Many stretches of the Orinoco can be reached by boat or small plane, and the difficulty of navigation in this uncharted territory limits opportunities for tourism and travel. Particularly during the rainy season, the river can rise quickly and flood vast areas of the rainforest. These seasonal floods make it more difficult to find your way around, as channels change and new obstacles are formed, often catching even experienced boaters off guard. The strong currents and whirlpools that appear in certain parts of the river are an extra danger, capable of capsizing smaller boats and posing a risk for anyone attempting to swim. Beyond the physical dangers over the Orinoco, it is home to a large number of dangerous species too, such as caimans, piranhas, and anacondas, all of which pose risks to humans. The jungles surrounding the river are dangerous too, with jaguars, poisonous snakes, and huge insects, making any exploration beyond the riverbank a pretty risky one. 12. The Murray River. The Murray River, which is Australia's longest river, flows over 1,500 miles or 2,400 kilometers from the Australian Alps through New South Wales, Victoria, and South Australia, before finally reaching the Southern Ocean. Its length means that it's one of the country's most important rivers, with its waters sustaining communities, agriculture, and unique ecosystems across huge regions. Though parts of the Murray pass through towns, large sections of the river wind through remote, sparsely populated areas. In these stretches, the river weaves through woodlands, flat plains, and wide landscapes where settlements are few and far between. Those who do travel the Murray must be well prepared, as most of the river flows through areas with extreme weather, where hot summers can bring burning temperatures and winters can be surprisingly cold, especially at night. The river also has a reputation for its unpredictable and potentially dangerous currents. In certain areas, strong undertows, submerged logs, and shifting sandbanks create risks for swimmers, boaters, and fishers. The river's appearance can be deceiving, as it may seem calm on the surface, but have powerful currents underneath. People who are unfamiliar with the river's quirks have been known to get caught in these currents, leading to accidents, some of them fatal. Seasonal flooding too then adds to those dangers, with sudden water surges and swollen banks turning calm waters into turbulent currents. When there's heavy rainfall, entire sections of the river can flood the surrounding plains, creating temporary wetlands that are difficult to cross. Then there's the range of wildlife, which can be dangerous in their own right. After all, this is Australia we're talking about. The river's banks are, for example, the perfect habitat for snakes, like the highly venomous eastern brown snake and the red-bellied black snake, both of which are commonly found in Australia and often hide near riverbanks. It's perhaps no surprise then that the Murray River has historically been a major barrier to travel and trade overland. With so many risks, it's not so easy to just build a bridge, so for a long time, people relied on ferries. Bridges though have now been built, of course, but these have sometimes proved to be controversial because of how much they change the landscape. 11. Shanay-Timpishka, Peru. Shanay-Timpishka, also known as the boiling river of the Amazon, is a mysterious natural formation that's deep within the Peruvian rainforest. This river, whose name means boiled with the heat of the sun in the local language, is in a remote sanctuary in central Peru. Stretching 4 miles or 6.5 kilometers, it's unlike any other river in the world, as its waters reach near boiling temperatures. The river was only really known about to the outside world relatively recently because it's in an extremely remote part of the Amazon forest. You can get there by a multi-day journey which includes boat rides, hiking through the jungle, and careful navigation with guides who know the region, but with no direct roads or infrastructure leading to it, the journey here is challenging, even for experienced travelers. And of course, this means that visitors are far from medical assistance or emergency services. The journey there may see you coming face to face with venomous snakes, spiders, and insects, and the trails are often overgrown, muddy, and difficult to use. There's also high humidity, sudden rainstorms, and limited supplies in the rainforest, where the dense canopy can hide paths, making it easy to lose your way. The main danger is, of course, the river itself, where the water temperature can range from 113 to 212 degrees Fahrenheit, or 45 to nearly 100 degrees Celsius in certain sections, which is close to the boiling point of water. The heat here is so intense that the local animals have learned to stay well clear of it too, and it's definitely not a place you'd want to swim. Local legends say that the river's heat is sacred, and stories about its origins linked to powerful ancestral spirits. The main belief is that it's actually created by Yakamama, which is a giant water serpent that's said to live in the Amazon, and whose name means mother of water. As for a scientific explanation, though, the river's temperatures are still a mystery. Unlike other sites like it around the world, the boiling river is not near any active volcano or tectonic plate boundary, which are usually responsible for heating underground water. Scientists think that deep underground fault lines could allow geothermal energy to rise closer to the surface, heating the river's waters to such levels, but for now, this is just a theory and it's yet to be proved. 10. The Gandaki River in Nepal. The Gandaki River is one of the most important and revered rivers in the Himalayas. Named after the goddess Kali, it begins in the Tibetan plateau near the Nepal-China border and flows southward across Nepal, carving out the famous Gandaki Gorge, which is one of the deepest gorges in the world, with two massive Himalayan mountains on either side. Eventually, it then goes into India, where it joins up with the Ganga River. This then is extremely remote, with tricky terrain all around. Steep cliffs are common alongside the river, and most villages along the route are isolated. The Annapurna Circuit, which is a popular trekking route, crosses parts of the Gandaki Valley, but even for experienced hikers, the journey is tough because of the river's steep terrain. Amazingly, its river basin contains an estimated 1,000 glaciers and 338 lakes, which means the flow of water is constantly changing. The river itself, though, is known for its strong currents, and things are even more dangerous during the monsoon season, which is from June to September. During this time, heavy rainfall causes the river to swell, transforming it into a powerful, fast-moving force that pushes aside anything. Landslides here happen all the time, particularly in the steep valleys surrounding the river. With the river originating from glaciers and snow-fed rivers high up in the Himalayas, the waters may well be fresh, but they're also icy all year round, meaning you definitely don't want to find yourself swimming in there. Even with all the clear dangers, people visit this river from around the world because of its place as a sacred river in Hindu and Buddhist traditions. This is mainly because it's believed to be home to the Shaligram stones, which are black ammonite fossils dating back millions of years and are seen as symbolic representations of the Hindu god Vishnu, so are collected by pilgrims who make the difficult journey to the river's banks as a sign of their commitment. 9. Rio Tinto, Spain. The name Rio Tinto is more commonly associated with the large mining company. The corporation was actually named after a river in Spain. Flowing through a region of Andalusia, it's about 62 miles or 100 kilometers long before it empties into the Gulf of Cadiz. It's been the site of mining activity for thousands of years, dating back to ancient civilizations like the Phoenicians, Romans, and Moors, who all settled the area because of its rich deposits of copper, gold, and other metals. With an unusual red color, there are high levels of iron, copper, and other heavy metals in the water, which oxidize upon exposure to air and give the river a rusty appearance. The extreme acidity of the river, with a pH similar to that of vinegar or lemon juice, makes it inhospitable to most forms of life, with the only things that live in there being microbial life. The river's remote location in the mountains of Andalusia further adds to its dangers. It may not be as isolated as others, but the Rio Tinto runs through uninhabited areas, making it difficult to access. Much of the river passes through hilly terrain, and much of which still has the remains of ancient and modern mining operations, which create a surreal and barren atmosphere. The effects of the mining also mean there's very little vegetation growing in the toxic, mineral-rich soil, and there are further dangers that have been left behind too. There are countless abandoned mine shafts and structures along the riverbanks, many of which are unstable and potentially dangerous to those who don't know that they're there. The area's history of mining has also led to severe environmental damage, with leftover waste and toxins from operations making the acidity and contamination of the river even worse. While some areas are accessible to visitors, safety warnings are everywhere to remind people not to get too close to the water or disturb the soil, as the high levels of toxic metals could pose serious health risks. 8. The Yenisei River in Russia. The Yenisei River is one of the longest rivers in the world. Traveling over 3,400 miles or 5,400 kilometers from Mongolia through Siberia and finally emptying into the Arctic Ocean. It is one of the most important rivers in Asia, dividing western and eastern Siberia and passing through a vast range of landscapes that include forests, steppes, and tundra. Most of the land around the river is uninhabited by people, with only a few small towns and settlements along its banks, and these outposts are almost entirely dependent on the river for transportation and supplies. Many of these communities can only be reached by boat in the summer or by ice roads during the cold Siberian winters, which are dangerous because of thin ice. The river experiences extreme seasonal variations, so in winter temperatures can plummet to -22 degrees Fahrenheit or -30 degrees Celsius or lower, causing the river to freeze over entirely. In the summer, when the ice melts, the Yenisei transforms into a powerful free-flowing river, with heavy rainfall and glacial melt from the Sayan and Tanu Ola mountains, having the potential to cause flash floods and dangerously strong currents. Unfortunately, even though it's so remote and the largest river to end in the Arctic, this is another river that's been hugely impacted by human activity, particularly by industrial pollution from Norilsk, which is a large industrial city north of the river. Waste from facilities here, including heavy metals and other pollutants, have entered the river system over the years and has contaminated parts of the river and its tributaries. This poses serious health risks for the wildlife and people who rely on the Yenisei for fishing and drinking water. So now, you can't trust the water or any food that's taken from this river. Moving on to number 7, the Salween River in Myanmar. The Salween River is one of Asia's longest free-flowing rivers, running for around 1,500 miles or about 2,400 kilometers through Southeast Asia, in countries like China, Myanmar, and Thailand, before finally emptying into the Andaman Sea. The river is a lifeline for isolated communities, but there's a number of dangers along the way. Cutting a path through steep, narrow gorges, dense forests, and mountainous landscapes, this makes access to the river pretty difficult and restricts movement for local communities, many of whom live in traditional villages that are only accessible by river. In areas where the river forms a border between Myanmar and Thailand, these regions have very few residents, and in Myanmar, many of these areas remain off-limits or inaccessible. The river's remoteness means that there's little infrastructure or emergency support available, and those who live or travel along its banks must be self-reliant. The river is seen as dangerous because of its strong currents, rapids, and seasonal fluctuations. It descends quickly from the Tibetan Plateau in China, picking up speed as it carves through Myanmar's mountainous regions. These fast-moving waters, often with rapids, make boating and transport difficult, especially during the monsoon season. During this period, the river's power increases with currents that can easily overturn small boats. Flash floods are common, too, and locals who rely on the river for fishing, farming, or transport must be wary of sudden changes. The steep cliffs and forests along the riverbank make access tricky, and people who are new to the Samui are only really meant to travel along it with guides who know it well. Even with all the dangers, though, including military conflicts that have been going on for decades, the river remains important for the communities and ecosystems it supports. Its free-flowing nature, which is rare for rivers in Asia as they often are dammed, means it sustains fish populations, endangered species, and culturally rich riverside communities who view it as a sacred and essential resource. 6. The Rio Santo Domingo, Mexico. The Rio Santo Domingo in Mexico is a lesser-known river that winds through the Sierra Madre del Sur mountain range in the state of Oaxaca. This is one of the most remote regions in Mexico, and the river has become known for its pristine waters, narrow canyons, and dense tropical forests. But this certainly isn't a place to visit without serious preparation. Located far from any cities or towns, the river is difficult to get to in the first place with very few established roads leading to its banks. The journey to the river involves long drives through winding mountain roads, and in some areas hikes through dense jungles. This means that the river has remained largely untouched by development, and there are very few people in the region, with only small scattered villages in the vicinity. The dangers of the river come from its remoteness and the unique geography surrounding it. It cuts through steep canyons, creating narrow gorges and strong rapids. During the rainy season, which lasts from May to October here, heavy rains turn the river into a powerful force. Sudden rises and water levels can create flash floods, with the rocky riverbed and narrow canyons making these conditions even trickier because of the way they trap and channel the water. Its remoteness also means that there's limited access to medical or emergency services in case of accidents. Even for nearby communities, assistance can be hours away, and in the case of tourists or adventurers exploring the area, help may be out of reach entirely. And of course, cell phone reception is generally poor, and the dense jungle and mountainous terrain make it challenging for any rescue efforts. It is a special river in South America, though, because it hasn't been affected by humans too much, and the water supports the surrounding forests, which themselves are risky too. There are hundreds of dangerous species in there, like venomous snakes, insects, and jaguars, and while it's rare you have to deal with one, the lack of medical assistance if something goes wrong means that you've got to be aware of what's lurking around every corner. 5. The Amur River, Russia and China. The Amur River, also known as the Heilongjiang in Chinese, is one of Asia's longest rivers, running for around 2,700 miles, or 4,300 kilometers, along the border between Russia and China, before flowing into the Sea of Okhotsk. This river, which forms a natural border between the Russian Far East and northern China, covers some of the most remote and difficult terrain in both countries, flowing through vast, uninhabited areas. Much of the areas surrounding the river are difficult to reach, especially along stretches where it passes through nearly impenetrable forests. There are a few towns along the Amur with large sections of its banks remaining uninhabited, but the river is a lifeline for small indigenous communities like the Ivank, Nanai, and Orokin people, who live along its banks and rely on it for fishing, hunting, and transportation. Seasonal changes here are what make this river particularly dangerous and unpredictable. In winter, temperatures can plummet, often reaching as low as -40 degrees Fahrenheit or -40 degrees Celsius. This frozen river is then used by locals and traders as an ice road to transport goods between remote communities. During the summer, when the ice melts, the Amur becomes a powerful, free-floating river with strong currents. In recent years, extreme flooding along the river has become more common, and these floodwaters can spread for miles. The river and its tributaries also support diverse wildlife, including endangered species such as the Amur leopard and Siberian tiger, which rely on the surrounding forest. Brown bears, wolves, and various large fish species also live in the area, making encounters with dangerous wildlife a genuine risk for those who get too close to the riverbanks or deep into the surrounding landscape. Number 4. The Sepik River in Papua New Guinea. The Sepik River, which twists and turns through the dense jungles of Papua New Guinea, is one of the longest rivers in the Pacific Island region, stretching over 700 miles or 1,100 kilometers. Flowing from the central highlands of Papua New Guinea to the Bismarck Sea, the river is relied upon by the region's many indigenous communities. This is an extremely remote river that travels through some of the least accessible regions of Papua New Guinea, an area that's covered by thick jungle. There are no roads running along the river's banks, and a few villages that are there can only be reached by canoe or boat. For locals, the river is a natural highway, serving as the main means of transportation, especially given the lack of infrastructure. And many communities along the river have limited or no access to modern conveniences like medical facilities, electricity, or clean water sources, making them highly dependent on the river for resource fishing or when collecting water. And this river abounds with local legends and stories, often reminding people to approach the river's edges with extreme caution. Floodwaters with this river can inundate villages, destroying homes and crops, and displacing entire communities. These and shifting sand creates hazards. And if that's not enough, the Sepik is a hotbed of diseases, with mosquitoes in the area transmitting malaria, dengue fever, and other illnesses. The dense jungle environment here surrounding the river is a breeding ground for insects like mosquitoes, and many of the small villages don't have any health facilities, which increases the risk associated with those diseases. 3. The Congo River in Africa. The Congo River is one of the longest and most powerful rivers in the world. traveling across the heart of Central Africa over a distance of around 2,900 miles, or about 4,700 kilometers, from its source in the highlands of the East African Rift to its mouth on the Atlantic Ocean. This river is the deepest in the world, with some sections reaching depths of over 720 feet, or 220 meters, as it flows through dense rainforests, remote villages, and rough terrain. The size of the river allows it to discharge nearly 1.4 million cubic feet, or 40,000 cubic meters of water per second, making it one of the largest river systems in terms of water volume, and this water helps support one of the planet's most biologically diverse regions. The surrounding rainforest here is a hotspot, home to gorillas, forest elephants, and rare birds like the Congo peafowl. But even though it's so long, it is incredibly remote, flowing through areas of the Congo Basin, which is the world's second largest rainforest after the Amazon. The river passes through some of the most isolated and hard-to-reach regions on the African continent, with most of it being dense jungle with little infrastructure. This isolation means that villages along the river are usually hours or even days away from any modern facilities, such as healthcare or markets, making life along the Congo River very challenging. In calmer sections, the Congo's fast flow and sudden changes in depth create difficulties for inexperienced travelers, with hidden whirlpools and sharp bends adding to the difficulty. Its rapids, especially the Inga Rapids, are so powerful that they've prevented any bridge from ever crossing the river, making it a natural boundary and a historical trade route. During the rainy season, the Congo River swells too, flooding nearby forests and communities. The banks become unstable with muddy conditions and submerged vegetation, making navigation even more difficult. And of course, adding to the river's danger are wildlife species like crocodiles and hippos, which can both be highly aggressive and are commonly found in and around the river. Hippos, in particular, are very territorial and have been known to attack boats, posing serious threats to local fishermen and travelers. And the river is also home to numerous species of fish, including the predatory Goliath tigerfish, which is one of the largest and most dangerous freshwater fish in the world. But for communities along the river, diseases like malaria, typhoid, and cholera are common, with the river itself becoming a breeding ground for waterborne diseases, especially in the wet season when flooding spreads contaminated water into the surrounding areas. Number 2. Yarlung Tsangpo, Tibet. The Yarlung Tsangpo, often referred to as the Everest of rivers, flows through the remote highlands of Tibet, eventually becoming the Brahmaputra River as it crosses into India and Bangladesh. Stretching over 1,700 miles or about 2,700 kilometers, the Yarlung Tsangpo originates from the melted ice of the Angsai Glacier near Mount Kailash in the Tibetan Plateau, which is one of the highest and most isolated regions in the world. Most of the river is surrounded by towering mountains, deep canyons, and harsh terrain. This region, which is set apart from the Trans-Himalayan range, has a few people living there, with just a couple of settlements and very limited infrastructure. The people who live along its banks are mostly Tibetan herders and farmers who have adapted to life in this challenging high-altitude environment. But the river itself is ferocious and unpredictable. As it descends down the Tibetan plateau, it picks up some serious speed, rushing through narrow gorges and creating powerful rapids. The descent here is so fast that it creates intense water pressure and dangerous whirlpools, posing some serious hazards. The Yarlung Tsangpo Grand Canyon, which is both deeper and longer than the Grand Canyon in the United States, has rapids that are practically impassable, with sheer rock walls and turbulent currents that can easily swallow vessels. The landscape and heavy rainfall combine to create frequent landslides, which can block parts of the river, forming temporary dams that could burst suddenly, releasing massive floods downstream. The high altitudes and thin air, of course, of the Tibetan Plateau pose further health risks to outsiders as well, with altitudes along this river often exceeding 10,000 feet or over 3,000 meters. And the lack of oxygen at these heights leads, of course, to altitude sickness. 1. The Loa River in Chile. The Loa River, which is the longest river in Chile, winds through the landscape of the Atacama Desert, which is one of the driest and most extreme environments on the planet. Stretching over 270 miles or 430 kilometers, it starts in the Andes Mountains and flows northwards in a horseshoe shape before emptying into the Pacific. It has an unusual course, which has been shaped by volcanic activity and geological shifts. The river meanders in a near semicircle, which geologists believe was caused by tectonic movements that redirected its flow over thousands of years. This odd shape has led to the formation of natural salt flats and mineral deposits along the banks, and this means that parts of the Loa contain high mineral concentrations, especially copper, and is why some of Chile's largest copper mining operations are nearby. The river has also been important to historical cultures, and it's where a number of petroglyphs and ancient archaeological sites have been found. The Loa petroglyphs, for example, were carved by the indigenous Atacamino people, who relied on the river's waters and depict llamas, figures, and mysterious symbols. One of the main dangers of the river is the risk of flash floods. Now, despite the dry climate, the Loa is prone to flooding, especially during the summer months, when the Andean snow and ice melt and increase the flow. Floods have a sudden and powerful force that can destroy infrastructure, homes, and even endanger lives. So for those who go into the river's isolated surroundings, flash floods pose a constant threat. Travelers are also subjected to extreme temperatures here, with the Atacama being known for its intense daytime heat, which often exceeds 90 degrees Fahrenheit or about 33 degrees Celsius, and its nighttime drops, which can fall below freezing. Further issues come from the rocky canyons that surround parts of the river, with steep cliffs and narrow passages which make travel along the river very dangerous. The water quality, too, takes things to another level of risk, after industrial mining operations in northern Chile, particularly in copper-rich areas near the river's source, have led to heightened levels of pollution. The river's water has been found to contain high levels of heavy metals and other pollutants due to runoff from mining activities, and for local communities that rely on the Loa as a water source, this poses serious health risks, affecting both the ecosystem and agriculture that depend on the river. Wild, unpredictable, and untamed, these rivers remind us how powerful nature can be. Some are breathtaking, others terrifying, but all demand respect.